And you're very welcome to the Racing Room with 8K Bets, where we're breaking with protocol for this one time only. And we're going to start the show with some positive news. Happy faces all around. We're never doing it again. Enjoy it while it lasts. But it's great. It's Christmas time after all. And AK, you're the boss. You're insisting that we just get in a good mood for once in this show.
Am I?
Maybe it's Calvin. Calvin, TC? No, Harry, no, right, it's just me.
No, I don't mind.
Okay, well, we're going to start with some good news last night. Maybe people in the UK weren't aware, but Willie Mullins won the best accolade he's ever going to win, Tony Calvin, which is the RTE Manager of the Year, which is quite something, I think. It's quite something. He was as surprised as everybody else, I think.
Yeah, it's who did he beat?
To be honest, I don't know.
Oh, okay. I thought
pretty good managers.
I'd have thought you'd have been up for commentator of the year and presenter of the year.
No, I know. I definitely wouldn't be getting that. But yeah, look, he won the award last night, which was, I guess, nice recognition of the year that he's had. And any publicity for racing, as we all know, is positive. I mean, we must embrace it and bring it into ourselves. And also, we had Rachel Blackmore back in the saddle yesterday after her injury. She rode Slade Steel today, in fact, in Naas. And how did that go, TC?
She looked like she could come on for the run there.
Who, Rachel or the horse?
Yeah, both got tired towards the finish. She was second, but yeah, good to see her back. She's been off for about 3 months, so yeah.
Yeah, no, it is, and I tell you, she's got some pretty stiff competition from Dara O'Keefe. Like, there's the kind of talk around the racing circles is like, is she automatic first choice now when she comes back? And I don't know, he's been riding very well, so we'll see what happens. How's your week trading wise, AK? Is it kind of a bit of a lull now with Christmas? We're getting ready for the darts. We're getting ready for the football. How's everything going?
Yeah, no, really well. I think results at the weekends probably just on the back of one of the best weekends we've ever had from a results perspective. To be honest with you,
Really?
Manchester Derby obviously with the big swing at the end was good for bookmakers, I'd imagine. Even Barcelona, I think Barcelona were about 20s on to win at home last night and got beat 1-0.
Wow.
So there's been a few shocks this weekend along the way. Even like
they're all building into accumulators, right? Like it's accumulators more so than kind of standout single bets, right?
Yeah, so like we bet some of the big events quite hard as part of our trading strategy. So yeah, so when the short ones get beat, it does kill the accumulators. So I think the darts is going to be a big thing. You might think it's winding down, but if anything, it's probably winding up. I'd say the last 2 weeks of December, especially the last week of December, when everyone's sick of the family, probably have one of our busiest weeks of the year, to be honest with you. So yeah.
Yeah, Harry, and of course, you solicitors are just phoning it in, going for nice lunches, 2 or 3 bottles of the finest French Malbec you can get your hands on, and no solicitors work at all for Christmas, right?
No, there's no clients want anything done usually before Christmas, before they go on holiday. Yeah, no, that never happens, luckily.
Super. Well, enjoy it. Do you reckon, Tony Calvin, that Charlie Deutsch eats Christmas dinner? Do you reckon he's the big turkey and the stuffing and the potatoes and all the trimmings? Does he get stuck in before he rides out on Boxing Day, as you guys call it?
No, I actually do think jockeys have their Christmas Day on the 24th. I actually do think that is true, actually, because they're all riding the next day. So yeah, but yeah, I just thought it was really strange. With the background to this is after he won on Gemma on Saturday, when he was down to his minimum rate of 10 stone 2, he came out and said in the previous 72 hours he had eaten an apple, a banana, and he felt guilty about eating a little bit of salmon. Now, I appreciate everyone listening to this will be probably thinking, you should try it someday, fat boy. But I just thought it was absolutely bizarre that, one, he came out and admitted it, and two, that there wasn't more comment about it. Because, quite frankly, if he's eaten that much in the previous 3 days and he's riding a ton of horse in an 11-runner race, as well as other riding in other contests as well. I mean, I'd rather he's turning up, over the limit from the day before, or with a little bit of coke left in his system, because he must be as weak as a kitten riding that kind of horse if he's that much he's done. And if he's eating that little, well, from the boxing, your boxing kind of like
But that's all controlled and it's measured. And
if he's eating that little, his fluid intake is probably minimal as well.
so he's dehydrated on top of it.
So I just thought I thought it was quite a, he's being honest, and he probably said it just after the race. But I just thought it's not. I think it's a bad look for the BHA and the PGA for him to come out and say that, and for everyone to just accept it. We all know it's probably not even in the nth degree of extreme that jockeys have gone to make a weight to ride a horse. But I just thought it was that the fact is accepted. I just thought it was very odd.
I'd say it's quite common practice, and I guess it's just they don't speak about it because probably the public perception, Harry, is I guess what TC's is and what everybody's is. That how can a sport encourage this kind of wasting, really?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the grim realities of racing. If you hang around with jockeys much, you very quickly pick up. Play golf with one. They have a boiled sweet to keep them the whole way around. Have you not had breakfast? Have you not had lunch? And they won't eat in the evening. That's not uncommon. And the thing is, people are getting taller and bigger, and the weights are staying the same that they've got to make. And it's going to get harder and harder. This side of it, but I agree with Tony. It's probably not something anyone wants massively highlighted, really. So
but I think the larger point here is that racing could actually do something about this. Like to get down to those draconian weights that they have to just go through hell and back. They could raise the weights, TC, but they did it during COVID, and that was universally acclaimed as a very positive thing, right?
Unless I'm mistaken, the actual weights carried are £4 less than is actually the reality, because during COVID they allowed them extra for body protectors, etc. And obviously jockeys haven't got saunas now, which kind of
that's a big part of it.
Which is a massive factor as well. So they could raise the minimum weight, but then that probably won't be good for betting purposes, because then you'll have very, very tightened handicaps, which probably bookmakers don't really want. But I mean, they could raise them, but what are they going to raise them to? And once you started doing that, where is the limit? But I just wanted to raise it because I just thought if it's got to an accepted level, then I just think that's quite a worrying sign, because they must be riding far weaker than they should be, if that's.
Have you ever done a 3-day fast, AK? Have you ever done a 3-day fast? No?
Okay, Two Chins has done no fasting of late, but my one experience of being around a jockey was the first Cheltenham I went to, and just through a lad at uni, went to school with Tom Weston, who was riding for Richard Newland at the time. I think he ended up being a trainer. I don't know if he still is. I'm not 100% sure. And I was in a house in and around Tom Weston prior to him riding. I think he had one ride at Cheltenham, and he was actually prize-wise on the morning we woke up in the house, and Tom Seagal had put him up for the Coral Cup, and he was riding a horse called Burn Old Boy in the Coral Cup. And I hadn't seen him eat food for a couple of days prior to that ride, and we all went out into Cheltenham afterwards, and from memory he devoured almost 2 pizzas that evening. Just to see it up close was just wild, and how starving he was essentially.
The funny thing about working alongside Ruby and Barry Geraghty and Davy Russell, apart from making me look like a fat pig on TV because they haven't put on any weight since they stopped racing. They haven't put on any weight at all.
No, I think they do. I think that it forms starts to change their body and the way their body works. I've noticed that with a lot of retired jockeys, and a lot of retired jockeys are still quite funny about what they'll eat. It's become a habit.
What's really odd. The rugby players tend to go the other way. I mean, they're probably bulking up, whatever. If you see some rugby players now, just a few years after they finished their careers.
Paul O'Connell's like a string bean at the moment. He's just when he stopped doing. Yeah.
The like I said, they're probably kind of on bodybuilding stuff there, but there was a time, it was about 5 years ago, and I saw a guy on TV and I thought, I recognise him. He's coaching, and it was Jerry Flannery. I mean, he must have lost about 6 or 7 stone.
Yeah, he's down in South Africa working with the Springboks at the moment. But he got injured the whole time because he was artificially making his body too big for the frame that he was carrying around. So he would tear muscles and tendons and injuries. But he was huge. But the result was his body kept breaking down. That's his normal size now. Like that's what he's walking around at. But you're right. Like the rugby players slimmed down, the jockeys stayed the same, and the rest of us just age with pounds with time. Anyway, let's talk about the racing for the weekend, if you don't mind. Some good, some bad. I think Marshborough was the best 2 mile novice chaser I've seen this season, and the best one I will see. TC, I am all in for the Arkle. What do you think?
Yeah, very impressive. Didn't beat slow boats either. Now into 5 for the Arkle. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree there.
He's a better jumper than Ballyburn, I think. He just like the way he attacked the anyway. Look, that's going to get into semantics, but yeah, I'm very impressed with him. Not so impressed with Coldwell Potter. I think whoever sold those horses, a few magic beans would have thrown in with the hat there because they are all. It's a bit of a horror show, TC, at the moment.
Yeah, a guy called ASODS on Twitter actually posted all the 29 horses that were in that brown dispersal spell back in February. 29 horses, prices ranging from 740, 620, 510, 420, and not one of them has won more than 42 grand. Wow. And some of them are just absolute horror stories. Where Coldwell Potter was obviously a high profile defeat for them on Friday, but a horse that ran today behind Slade Steele, actually, a horse called Staffordshire Knot, was bought for 510 grand at that dispersal sale. It's 0 from 6 since, and was finished a distant 6 behind Slade Steele and who finished second.
And Slade Steele, who we already know is a questionable jumper of offence, but like 504, what? Oh my God!
That was Jiggins down. I wouldn't have thought they'd be particularly enamoured by that. But it's just go and have a look at that. It's on Odds Ace's Twitter feed. It is staggering how we mention it in every single week about the madness at the sales, but for jump horses with no breeding value, and we mentioned last week that John Bon, even though winning £1 million in prize money, probably hasn't won JP that much more money than the 570 grand sales price. It's just
we probably need some affordability checks. I don't know about you guys.
We do. We absolutely do. Some of those prices there for what you're getting. Windsor, TC, obviously, I thought we were trying to cut back on the amount of meetings going on over there. What's the story? Why are you having more meetings? They're like changing from flat to jump. We don't need this. We don't need this.
I tried to find out yesterday and this morning, but to no avail. I'm assuming ARC must have transferred some fixtures so Windsor could start racing again over jumps. Now, they had their first meeting yesterday since 2005 over hurdles and over fences as well. Seemed to be a great success. They got 4,602 people through the gates, which is only 3 flat fixtures have had more, so it's quite a feat.
Not including children and pregnant women, right?
Oh God, yeah, they were probably signing them in as well, wasn't it? Family Fun Day.
Check those figures.
But it was it's like I said, I just can't believe, unless they were transferred fixtures, like I said, from other ARC tracks, I can't see how they got it through, because everyone, as we continually says on here, we should be cutting the fixture list dramatically, not adding to it. And it wasn't that well supported. We had 4 of the 7 races with 6 runners or less, so it was a curious one. But they seem to have got it back on track, and it seemed to be well received. But
okay. There you go. Okay, we're trying to cut down the fixtures. We're not anyway. Look, listen, fair play to them and all that kind of stuff, and hopefully it goes well. Anything else in the racing? Django Bay, Country Mile. This is Cheltenham. Obviously, Chianti Classico is I think his career is pretty much gone now. After did he sever a tendon or something like that? But
seems to be. Yeah, we had it was quite a fun story actually. James Bowen and Sean Bowen, the brothers, they dead heat in a race at Cheltenham on Saturday.
Yeah,
I imagine that will be a first for racing.
Yes, absolutely.
But it was quite a quiet weekend. Even though they had the bumper horse Calypso Chance, I think, one for Gordon Elliott.
Yes. And there was a very good horse of Willie Mullins, Patrick Rudd, I think Future Prospect or something like that. I don't know if I have the name right there, but over the weekend, and he absolutely trounced them. So Two to take note for the old bumper field. Right, let's move on. The boys at the old Bar Stewards podcast, lads, had an interview with Matt Garb-Cousin, who's I didn't know who this guy was at all, but apparently he's single-handedly, Harry, responsible for the downfall of greyhound racing. And if we're not careful, he's going to turn his attention to horse racing. So why should we not piss this guy off? And who is he?
Well, he's Matt Zarb-Cousins rather
Zarb-Cousins,
than Garbs. He is a one-time part of central part, I think, of Team Jeremy Corbyn. He's now, I think, left the Labour Party because it's not left wing enough and moved to the Greens, which gives you an idea of his political positioning. So he was interviewed on Bar Stewards during the last week, and it was a surprisingly convivial interview, given that he has been pilloried really for a number of years as the guy who is trying to over-regulate gambling. Some people would say bring it to a crashing halt. And he came onto Bar Stewards to say he would like there to be a carve-out for punting on horse racing. And the principle behind that is that horse racing is an industry, a sport. It's what people call, what's people calling it, a prestige sport, or a sport, a heritage sport, whatever
Heritage sport, yeah.
that goes back 200 years. Some might say that so does cockfighting, but it's that seems to be his thinking. So, and it's massively split people in half. And I have to say, I sit firmly on the fence, having thought about it quite a lot. Basically, there are those who say, well, why are you listening to Zarb-Cousins? Why is he a friend now? Because basically he came on to say, come on racing, get behind me and let's sort of turn on slot betting. And let's get affordability checks and other things applied to slot betting, but let's get a carve out for horse racing. And so half of let's say there has been a split, whether it's down the middle or not, I don't know. But a lot of people have said, well, he's going to turn on racing next. He's an anti-gambling Puritan. He says he's not. And the Bar Stewards, for their part, basically say, well, look, we're interested in saving horse racing. We don't care about betting on golf. We don't care about betting on football. Any port in a storm, to an extent. Realpolitik, I think, is really their argument, is if he is going to help us save horse racing and get a carve out from perhaps affordability and perhaps even other regulatory barriers, then that's fantastic. All we care about is horse racing. That's what we want. So you've sort of got now, and it's been coming this, I suppose, you've got a division between the sort of gambling libertarians, people who don't believe affordability checks should apply to anyone, and what you might call the pragmatists, who say, well, you might be right about that, but so far you haven't had much luck in opposing affordability checks generally. And so if we can carve out make a carve out for racing, even if it involves getting into bed with people we don't particularly like the look of, frankly, then let's do that. And that's where we are. It's been a very interesting week. It's really, I think, brought quite a lot of internal warfare. AK, I think, got involved.
Where's Anthony going to make his profits from if they're going to separate horse trading and the slots in the casinos? AK, what's going on here? Who is this guy? Go get him! Get him!
That's hard again. Hard to know where to begin here, but
I'm listening to you, by the way. I'm just going to go and sneeze here.
That looks like a very dramatic sneeze. It involved Hugh having to go off camera.
Are you okay there, Hugh? It's grand.
He's just gone to have a banana and an apple and a bit of salmon.
Yeah.
Keep him going.
You okay?
Yeah, go for it. Sorry, I just had to. You can leave that in, by the way. It's just dramatic pause. Go on, continue. You don't like this guy. You don't like this crusty old green.
He's 34.
He was shaking on that couch of the podcast that I watched recently, like a 55-year-old. But I think he's extremely dangerous, and I think his oxygen is being cut off from his positions, and I think I think everybody should just have nothing to do, and I think he's an exceptionally dangerous person, and has every single back note to his history is anti-gambling and anti-people being able to spend the money as they desire. I wouldn't. I genuinely just ignore him. To be honest with you, it would be my approach. I have no issue with people whose goal is to separate sports. Forget horse racing. Sorry, if you don't mind, to separate sports gambling with casino gambling. I don't have much of an issue with that. I do have much of an issue with somebody whose whole backstory is around basically choking the gambling industry.
The thing is, AK,
kicking
I don't think you can ignore him. He is almost
I
single-handedly
can.
responsible for the £2
I don't think he is. I
a
think the people
spin.
who back. No, I think the people who were funding him were.
Well, yeah, but that's the same.
Have a lot
That's
to
still
play in.
him.
Yeah, yeah.
That's still him. You know, I think
I think you can ignore him. That would be my opinion. He's, yeah. What would you say about him? And listen, as we mentioned, the Bar Stews podcast it's one of the few podcasts, and it's definitely the only other podcast on horse racing that I listen to. And again, I think just from my gambling background, I think I've always liked listening to people's opinions. I disagree with, but because that usually involves you can make a few quid. But with this guy, I just think he's an exceptionally dangerous person, and I think everything he's done is always a means to an end. It doesn't stop. Like 3 weeks ago, the man was calling to ban greyhound racing. Wants an end to greyhound racing. Like, do you want to get in bed with that guy? Like, he can fuck off.
He is moving into welfare, which what you would have thought would have fallen outside his expertise. And I think that brings up another question, really, which is a slightly sensitive one, which is he himself suffered very badly from an addiction to fob teas and when he was 16.
Oh, right. Okay.
And you do have to.
Buy a dog when he was 5 as well, or something.
Did he? I have no idea. But
like, honestly, that's fine. I think again we're comparing all these things. You're comparing issues in the industry, of which there have been plenty, to things that occurred a long time ago.
Well, funny enough, I was going to slightly make the other point, which is that I wonder whether someone who has had such a unique experience with gambling is really an appropriate person to be so influential in the debate, because the vast majority of people do not have even slots problems. I mean, you get some ridiculous statistics. I think the Guardian said 45% of people who gamble on slots are problem gamblers, which just strikes me as almost completely impossible. But you do have to wonder whether someone who had such an extreme reaction that he, considered suicide as a young man over fob teas is really someone who should be remotely involved, or certainly not centrally involved, in how racing is going to be funded going forward. And that seems to be how he's positioning himself. So I completely understand where the Bar Stews have come from, and they were very open in their most recent podcast about it, which is that they just want to save racing, and they will, if it involves Matt Cousin helping, then they'll take that. They don't care. I think they said they don't care about golf. They don't care about football. If you can impose affordability checks and not impose them on racing, a lot of racing fans would jump at that. Quite how it would happen is another matter, but I think a lot of people would jump at it.
Why? Just one thing.
I genuinely, sorry, just to interject there again. Just one more thing. I think you're giving this lad way too much credit for what he is. Like, oh yeah, let's all get behind him and save horse racing. This guy's got no influence at all in this debate at all. He shouldn't be entertained at all.
I'm not sure that's entirely right.
Why has he got so much credibility? Might be the wrong word. Why has he got so much prominence?
Well, partly to do with his political background is that he was quite powerful for some time when he was quite senior in the Labour Party, but also because he has got quite heavily involved with some prominent and rich gambling reformers who, as I understand it, are quite a tight, well-organized political unit who are able to leverage their position and punch above their weight. They're now quite heavily involved in American betting now, by the sounds of things, in terms of lobbying and the impact they have. I agree with AK to an extent, which is that how much can he do? The impression I get, the strong impression I get, is that he and his team, his gang, are well connected in the corridors of power, and that is, whether we like that or not, is an entirely different matter. But that, I think, is, I'm on various WhatsApp groups with various people. People are very worried about Zarb Cousins and what he and his gang are capable of and what they've done already. So listen, they may all be wrong. Maybe the emperor is not wearing any clothes, but I think that you ignore him, whether you support him or oppose him. But I think I do think you ignore him at your peril. That's my own view.
The problem is, I guess,
racing and the gambling industry have got to get their act together about fighting off and putting its best foot forward in these cases. Like, I genuinely think that these guys are overplayed what influence they have. Like the whole. I think that for me the big striking thing is it's always incremental. It's incremental things. They don't stop at what. It's the same with the animal layer types. They do not stop at what the next thing is. There's always a new thing to go on to, and it's nobody asks. You never get a comment off him saying how many people have you kicked offshore, how many problem gamblers have you looked at that are now betting into the black market. They won't comment on that because it's literally they're just moving on to the next thing, and the consequences will be felt by other people. I think personally think they're causing an unbelievable amount of damage that they're not acknowledging. And to counteract these people, if you're going to do it sensibly, I can say fuck off as much as I want. But if you want to really counteract these people, I think all the things that they've argued for, it doesn't take much work to put forward some of the negatives about some of their positions as well. And I think racing and gambling probably need to get its act together for a uniform position in that regard and organise itself.
Absolutely.
I get the well organised part, but they're also arguing for things.
If you give someone the keys to the city and ask them to provide solutions, you have to be really sure of their motivation. You have to trust the fact that they do have, some best interests of the people that they're trying to harm, supposedly. And I think you got to be careful who it is you trust in these things. Right, TC.
I just presumably he monetizes these positions that he has. So presumably he gets paid a wage for doing this. It sounds like a full-time job. So if he's going on the greyhound route, if he's going down the slots route, if he's going down the horse racing route, what's the incentive for him to stop until he's got this anti-gambling agenda? But horse racing will be down the line.
I don't really know about that, but I did just have a look at GamStop, which I think is one of his. Is it GamStop, or he's got some app, hasn't he? That Gamban, sorry. And it does still say at the bottom of it that one of its sort of central tenets is that betting more than you can afford is a sign of problem gambling. But that brings us back to the whole question of what does "can you afford" mean, and that is the one question that has not been addressed in any of this debate. It's the fundamental problem with affordability checks is no one really knows what afford means. It's not something you can really assess on a short-term basis most of the time. You might buy a house that you find you can't afford in 10 years' time because interest rates have gone up. It's a really complicated and probably unanswerable question, but and yet still the term affordability is thrown around as though it means something. It just doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. Gambang famky ma'am. There's
the name for the pod.
That's the name for the pod.
PC, did Conor Grant provide any solutions to the huge problems facing racing at the Gimcrack dinner there in New York the other night? Was he?
I'll read from my notes here just in case I don't get it wrong. Conor Grant is a racecourse media group. You sneezing again there, you. And he made a speak at the Gimcrack dinner or lunch. And again, it was a kind of a wish list for racing. Very similar to an article that Tom Kerr wrote a couple of weeks ago, which put forward his wish list, free wish list, but didn't show you how to get there, which is a common theme in racing.
I want, but I don't know how to do it.
He did flesh it out a little bit, but there were three tenets of what he wanted. He wanted stakeholder compromise. He wanted empowered leadership, and he wanted a clear mandate for change.
So
Now,
they're just buzzwords.
I think everyone in racing would agree with that, but nobody's got any idea how it comes about. I mean, the idea is, I mean, who's going to give in first? Is it going to be RMG, or RMG going to give up something? Are they going to let racing TV be free to air for the good of racing? It's kind of like nobody's going to blink first here, are they? Nobody's going to come. Oh yeah, I'll race courses. I'll give all the control of our fixtures to the BHA for the good of the sport. It's just not going to happen. We've seen that with Martin Credits and ARC. I mean, it's obviously it's well intentioned. There's nothing, if you go and read the article, there's nothing in there you would really, take offense to. But there's no practicality in there. It's just a wish list that will.
Sounds like David Brent trying to justify his job when the boss comes in. What are you doing here? Well, downsizing, just general motivation, or there's no point to it. There's no purpose. It's just buzzwords. And it might sound great and it might look great when you're writing it down, but it's not going to lead to anything. There's nothing specific there. What he said.
Who's going to take the lead? I mean,
I think even more fundamental question is, who is there that is placed to do it? Has it become such a finely balanced
political Michael O'Leary
atmosphere?
Michael O'Leary.
Well, as of yet, he's not in the room. But I mean, I suppose if he gets in there, everyone else will leave. That's probably true.
Could probably fit it in between his Ryanair job and the horse racing, Anyway,
yeah.
I think it all starts and finishes with the race courses holding the power for most of the fixture list. And they're not going to give that up. They're just not. Race courses are not going to vote for less racing on their tracks.
They're not going to change their dressing rooms, and they're not going to vote for less races in the tracks. What are they going to do?
You have to I was thinking about this the other day and trying to put a serious head on it now. Do you somehow incentivize them to reduce it? So do you say, I don't know, are there some tracks on bloody Greenbelt land or something like that where you just like, we'll back you and put this, I don't know, there was talk of Kempton being sold for gaffs, wasn't there, back in the day or a few years ago. Do you use it, does racing, I'm not saying Kempton specifically, but does racing get together with these stakeholders and to try and get some power back, support them making money from other ventures like building houses or something like that? Like, is that an option? I don't know, but like you said, they do have the power at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. Tell me this then. The Bet365 stuff on Twitter. I put up the Marsborough tweet there the other day. I said, Marsborough, all in for the Arkle, house, wife, kids, wheelbarrow, the whole lot. And I tagged at Bet365 just for the crack, because I saw those screenshots of guys who have been approached by someone on their social media saying, sorry, we saw you went balls. He said, I went balls deep on a horse there last week. Can we just step into the office here and talk about what's going on, Tommy?
Honestly, I read it. It's untrue. It's like some of the guys wanted to know as well how Bet365 knew it was them, and in order to link their Twitter account to their account. Now, some of the ones were obviously Jockey. There were two in particular, and they were clearly just having a laugh as people do, but they're just taking them as gospel and just said, can you give us a call, please? We want to talk to you about safer gambling and and the like. It's real Big Brother stuff, isn't it? And honestly, I just thought it was just a piss take, but it just sounds, and people just coming up and adding to the thread and saying, yeah, this has happened to me, and it's just, if you can't laugh and joke about stuff, and it was clearly a joke, without getting your account restricted, or even I think one of them even got their account suspended until he actually.
He had to explain that. He had to explain the joke. He had to explain
for a
the
month
joke.
and wasn't allowed to watch TV. He had to sit in his mother's basement and just read the newspaper, apparently.
But this, as mental as that is from the bookmaker, it really reflects so badly on the whole way things are regulated that people think that is something they need to worry about.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's crazy. Okay, that Noel Meade letter in the, I think he sent it to both the Racing Post and the Irish Field over here, but he wasn't happy, TC, with 3-year-old target races for 3-year-old horses over hurdles as such that don't count as maiden. So basically 3-year-olds, a series of races that they can get experience, kind of learn how to jump a little bit better, but they can still turn around at the end of the year, January, and go and enter into a maiden hurdle and run it. And he thinks that's ridiculous.
Yeah, again, Richard Forrester wrote a really good piece on this before Noel Meade sent his letter in. Noel Meade might have read Rich's piece and thought he could follow in. Yeah, it's all to do with they're a new academy series. It was dreamt up by the IHRB and the RRB, I think. And they basically said you can go into these races. We encourage you to go into these races. And as a result, the encouragement, and even if you win one, you'll still be eligible to run in maiden hurdles, and you won't be penalised for winning them. And obviously, other trainers who are not minded to go into these races are going to be a disadvantage if they're lining up against winners who aren't penalised, so and eligible to run in maiden hurdles. So Noel Meade came out there and said it's kind of like scenes of Father Ted, and it was and actually when the story went up on X and Twitter, a lot of people in racing, I think Kate Harrington was on there, I think Joe Chambers went on there, and basically just applauding the letter that he wrote. So it's just it could be classic racing, isn't it? We've seen it with with those series where the top 4 trainers weren't allowed to be.
Yeah.
And then backlash to that, threatening legal action, etc. It could be viewed in the prism of that is that racing is just totally against change. Even a minor thing like this little series, even a minor thing about those 50 or 60 races in a 1600 race kind of like season. It's probably a microcosm of racing's problems, because when they try to do something to change, everyone just rallies against it. It could well be that they're justified in rallying against it here, but it was quite an amusing letter if you read it.
Yeah, it was. I think it's still in the Irish Field. If you can get your hands on it, it's worth the read. Okay, listener questions then, and we have 5 or 6 of them here. Vendor of Charisma, interesting name. In the 72 hours prior to winning the December Gold Cup, Charlie Deutsch claims to have eaten an apple, a banana, and a piece of salmon. Well, we just talked about this. If true, the boy needs help. Isn't the the PGA and the BHA supposed to be interested in the welfare of jockeys? Well, look, we dealt with this, and yeah, I remember Joseph O'Brien, like when he was riding, like he could barely utter a word. Like he wouldn't eat at all during the week before, say, big races at the weekend, because he's quite tall. Like if you can see him walking around, and he was just miserable the whole time. Then he stopped being a jockey, and he was able to eat as much as he liked, and he's still miserable. So I don't know, maybe it wasn't the food.
Can I just say though, I don't see the PJ.
Joseph.
I don't see how the PJA can be blamed for this one. I mean, they've got to. They can't start telling their members to go and have a Sunday lunch.
No, I'm not causing any blame there, but they would rather this didn't come out this starkly, because obviously, well, I mean, in his book and stuff like that, they used to have dinner parties, and because he couldn't eat, he used to go and run a bath and sit in the bath while everyone was downstairs eating and drinking and laughing, which probably would make you miss
crazy.
Sin, but at least that's that excuse. No, I don't. But yeah, it's kind of like I just think it was a bad look.
Definitely,
it's a true reflection of what happens, and it's probably there's far more extreme versions going on a daily basis, but. I think the PGA and the BHA might have just winced at that when that came out.
Yeah. Okay. Chris Fawcett says, if the shift continues to an even more highly regulated gambling industry, serving lots of small punters, all losing a little each week, do you think larger staking punters and independent bookmakers will give up or switch to the black market? Well, okay, you're on the record as saying that, that the black market is going to take over. We're getting ready. The invasion.
Yeah, I think that's the way it's developing, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I think it's not, we're not speaking in future tense here. We're probably it's a little bit present tense, isn't it? It's worked out. Yeah, it's just worrying. I think like it gets more highly regulated. Geez, what else can you do?
Yeah.
It's fairly a mess at the moment. So
advertising is the next frontier.
I think it will. Say that again, Harry.
Advertising, I suspect, is the next frontier.
Roland from Matchbook Exchange says, did you mention the Greyhound return at Doncaster? Screenshot sent through. Betfair steady enough to little money and returns the 1-2 winner.
Yeah, I mean, this was. But I just picked up. Someone just tagged me in on a conversation they were having. Apparently, there was a greyhound at Doncaster. It was trading around 7-4 on Betfair. You know, it wasn't for great deal.
Yeah.
I think there was 11 grand matched on the dog. But it returned at 2s on, and a lot of people were saying it's the most extreme example of a dodgy SP that they've ever seen. But apparently, I spoke to Jonathan Kay about this greyhound journalist, and he's just said it didn't sound like it was that extreme, and it could well be commonplace. Well, Anthony obviously used to trade greyhounds and stuff like that. We've heard some of the stories about him from Harlow and the likes, but it's just so who returns the greyhound SP, Anthony?
It's like it's an industry price essentially. So it's not formed. I think that's where the change is. The change these used to be the prices used to derive from the track. You know, where the track were pricing up is probably part of it as well. But it's an industry show and an industry SP return. So I think the average is about 125%. That race in particular was 135%. So it looks like an error just in that regard. But then again, I suppose the SPs are being derived from markets where there's very, 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 very little being traded. So I don't know. It's wrong in that instance, but I don't think it's anything.
Nothing too.
It wasn't anything in particular to that
Okay.
greyhound or that particular race. In my opinion, it's just essentially whoever's sent the SPs has probably just sent them to 135 instead of 125 in that regard.
Okay. Gwyneth Racing says, you discussed the high costs of running an exchange. Given dwindling liquidity and occasional outages, is there any worry that Betfair just pull the plug on theirs at some point? TC, they hardly do that, will they?
No. Have you seen some of the money traded on cricket? Just eye-watering. And a lot of it's obviously like traded churn, but you know, it's just phenomenal the money that gets stuck up there.
Yeah.
It would never be. I mean, I would say racing is probably, it's really dwindling, isn't it? So but even so, it will never happen there. I mean, but it's like we've mentioned it before. I mean, people have said, oh, why don't racing, whoever racing is, have their own exchange? I mean, the cost of running an exchange is phenomenal. But once you've got the infrastructure in place and you can keep it stable, then there's no downside to just letting it play out. I mean, we've seen racing liquidity.
My opinion on that would be, like Tony says, you mentioned cricket. Well, some of that money in the cricket market that we can see on that exchange from the UK and Ireland, a lot of it, I'd imagine, isn't being derived from UK and Irish accounts. So it depends how it's treated. If the turnover was restricted to the pool of the country you're in, say for example in Italy, my understanding is in Italy the exchange is just from Italian customers, so it can look quite different to other exchanges in the same brand but in different countries essentially. So overall, as a worldwide company, it would be very interesting to see where bits of money and through what sites and what white labels and stuff like that is actually ending up in the pool that UK and Irish customers see, because it's not all derived from UK and Irish customers basically.
Okay,
I remember going out to Dubai. I was out in Dubai, and Andrew Dell looked after all the big staking cricket punters, and he took me to see this guy at his house, and he was just like trading away and stuff like that. It was absolutely unbelievable. You talk on certain occasions you're talking about 6 figures ball by ball, and it's phenomenal. And I wonder why they've got X amount of hundreds of millions traded on these events. It's just and that was at the time, and it probably still is. It's kind of like a grey area.
Still is, I'd say. Still is the old Indians. David Brown, last two. Is it a problem that many of the top journalists in the industry have an association with big bookmakers, i.e. Nick Buck, William Hill, being an example? They are unlikely to call out issues as they won't bite the hands that feed them. I don't know. I think there's too much made of this, to be honest with you. Like what are they not saying like that they could say? I think that their personality stops them saying, I guess shouting from the rooftops over stuff that maybe pundits are angry about.
Did you not get the sheet of things AK won't let us say during this podcast, Hugh?
I must have missed that one actually.
I think
went into my junk email.
I think it is a little bit overplayed, isn't it? I mean, nobody's directly said you can't.
No,
that. But I'd probably ignore it anyway. I think the bigger issue is the amount of people, journalists in racing, who want to be kind of like cheerleaders and promoters of the sport rather than journalists.
Yeah,
I think that is probably a more issue than not going down certain betting stores.
Yeah.
They got an association with a certain bookmaker. I just think they want to shy away from stories that reflect badly on the sport because they want it to be seen as all nicey, and I think that's more of a risk for their own journalistic integrity than anything else.
Yeah, fair enough. Last one, Dave Bradshaw says, on a light-hearted note, always nice to finish on a light-hearted note, Dave. What were a panel's biggest ever winners, or the most satisfying, and their biggest blowouts? Presumably Hugh would have found a 10s-on shot and put his mortgage on it. Well, Dave, it wasn't quite 10s on, but I did back Quevega every single one of her mare's hurdle wins, and she got shorter and shorter in the price over the years. Stopped me. And it was just as enjoyable. In fact, the last one was the most enjoyable. So there you go. Quevega for me. Anyone else got one?
Most satisfying was Cole Harden in the Stayhouse Hurdle. Good job I didn't do that now, actually, because I've been talking it up since early January, and after it won, I was so cock a hoop. I went on Twitter and said I won't be on here for a bit, so I'm just about to go and knock one out. So Bet365 would have been on to me.
Your mic's gone, Hugh.
Nearly got there, Hugh. Your mic's gone.
I think my one was when I was at university. I backed a horse at 25 to 1. Kelso, the last race of the day, with the last cash I had in my pocket, and it won. A horse called Corby Lynn. And in those days, I didn't have any money because I was at university. That was an absolute game changer for me in those days.
You were able to go out courting and pheasant shooting for the afternoon.
Yeah. Paid for a good hours of pheasant shooting. Yeah.
Lovely. AK, briefly before we leave it.
My most satisfying one was after leaving my previous employer. I popped up in some of their shops for the 2018 World Cup, and they decided to take me on. I took about 60 grand off them. And my worst bet ever, apart from Tom Daly to win Sports Personality of the Year, which I did 1 year, was betting. I bet Aidan O'Brien, I think it was Aidan O'Brien, to beat Gosden in the Flat Trainers Championship 5 or 6 years ago, and there was 2 meetings left, and I'd gone through all entries and where I thought entries were going to be the following weekend, and I just made Aidan like a 4s-on shot, and you could bet him at 6 to 4, and I absolutely lumped on. I think I had about 8 or 9 grand on, which was a good bet for that market. Smashed Aidan into odds on without factoring. I'm sure the price didn't factor this in as well, but I didn't factor in the fact that Doncaster was going to get called off at the end of the year, and just basically Gosden was a 100s-on shot basically, and the meeting never happened. I think so. It was a shocker of a bet.
Okay, on that bombshell, we will leave it. We're all off to fast for 3 days in the hope that we can slim down to look like jockeys in our next life. What do you reckon, TC?
Yeah,
not going to happen.
3 days, 3 years. I'll have to be Tom Hanks in Castaway.
Yeah. We'll be back with our pre-Christmas show next Monday, the last one before Christmas, and we'll all have to wear Santa hats and all the rest of it. But enjoy your week, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure as always, and we'll talk to you soon. Cheers.